wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillahi amma ba'du. Welcome, brothers and sisters, dear viewers, to a new episode of Freedom in Al-Islam, a program in which we've been dealing with the concept of freedom from multiple angles. Last episode, we talked about how the Muslim lady is free to marry who she wants to marry. She can choose a suitable mate in accordance to what pleases her and what goes in line with her desires. Obviously, she should have the input of those people who are around her and who are concerned for her affairs, for her happiness, and for her future, inshallah. But ultimately, the final decision comes down to her. And it is from the affairs of al-Jahiliyyah for the father, the awliya of the girls, to insist and to compel the girl to marry someone who she is not pleased with marrying. One of the biggest problems and the biggest challenges that we have as Muslims living in the UK at this particular time is how Muslims continuously hold on to their oppressive culture, the shackles of the culture, and they compel their daughters to marry men who the girls are not interested in. The girl grew up in the UK. She speaks English. She has embraced the UK way of life. She's a Muslim and she's practicing and religious. And the father insists that he has to make her marry his sister's son back in their homeland, his brother's son back in the homeland. The girl says, okay, I'll meet him. When they meet, when they talk, they have absolutely nothing in common except that they share blood. They're cousins. They come from the same village. Their mother and fathers are brothers and sisters. That's it. But in terms of mutual attraction, in terms of a deen, then you don't find this. And in Al-Islam, for the nikah, for the wedding, there has to be something that is called al-makafa, where there has to be some compatibility. The Prophet ﷺ was approached by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to marry Fatima. The Prophet said, no, you're too old. He was approached by Umar for Fatima in marriage. He said, no, you're too old. But he wound up, as you all know, marrying Fatima to Ali. Ali grew up in the house of a Nabuwa. Ali was young. Fatima is the house of a Nabuwa, and Fatima is young. So Ali married Fatima radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. There has to be some compatibility. It is a disturbing trend that some Muslims, they insist on putting the shackles of slavery on the necks, the hands, and the ankles of their daughters by insisting you're going to marry your cousin whether you like it or not. When you were just a little baby, this has been decided and you're not going to change it. And if you change it, we're going to boycott you. If you change it, we're going to not speak to you. We're going to cut you off and put you out of the will and out of the house. This is Jahiliyyah. It's not the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. There was that lady that I mentioned who her parents wanted to insist that she marry someone. And when the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told her the rights or the haqq of the husband over the wife, she swore and said, wallahi, I'm not going to get married, because she didn't feel she could take care of those rights. She said, wallahi, I'm not going to get married. When the Prophet heard her say, wallahi, I'm not going to get married, if it was haram for her to say that, he would have stopped her. Which goes to show, if a person doesn't want to get married, he's not sinning. It's not wajib to get married, because that lady said, wallahi, I'm not going to get married. She could have meant, I'm not going to marry that man, but who knows what she meant. The Prophet, aqarraha ala hadha kalam. He gave his tacit approval and he was silent for what she said. But the reason why I'm mentioning it, it goes to show the Prophet supported her when she said, I'm not going to get married, when her father was actually trying to force her to get married. So marriage, ikhwani, is an institution that is supposed to bring peace and harmony. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in the Quran, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. From the ayat of Allah Azza wa Jal, from his signs, is that he created for you mates from your own selves. And he created them so that you can have a sakina and you can be with them, a sakina. And he put between your hearts love and rahmah. Love and rahmah. This is an ayat for those who understand. The father and the mother who forced the girl to get married to someone who she doesn't want, he doesn't want her, she doesn't want him, maybe he wants her, she wants him, maybe he doesn't want her, whatever the combination is, the parent who forces this situation, they don't understand. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. People who ponder and think. As for the one who doesn't ponder and think, the ayah said, we made between you mawadda, we made between you rahmah, we made between you sakina. There's no sakina because you're forcing the girl and the boy. It's slavery. As for Al-Islam, it gave people freedom in the bab of nikah. If the man gets married, he becomes free. And that he's able now to have someone in his house who's going to help him to fulfill his full potential. And the girl is going to help her husband reach the full potential. They're no longer tied to the shackles and the slavery of being single, which is a fitna. It's a fitna. It's difficult. Could be adab. It's very, very difficult. So now, with that being the case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said on the lisan of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the Prophet heard about those three men, one said, I'm going to pray all day, all night. I won't go to sleep. Another one said, I'm going to fast every day. I won't break my fast. Another one said, I'll never get married to women. The Prophet told those people, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the whole community, I get married and I eat and I go to sleep. I fast, I break my fast. I pray and I go to sleep and I get married to women. فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. Anyone who abandons my sunnah, he is not from me. Anyone who forsakes my sunnah, he is not from me. It's not from me. So the Prophet's sunnah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is az-zawaj and nikah. And this is the sunnah of all of the anbiya and all of the rusul. Isa ibn Maryam, when he comes back, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, he's going to break the cross, Isa ibn Maryam. Isa ibn Maryam is going to raise off of the jizya. He's going to take no more jizya. Isa ibn Maryam is going to kill the swine. And there are those who say that he's going to get married as well, because this is the complete man, the one who has gotten married. The Prophet said about marriage, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, man tazawwaja faqad istakmala nisfa dinihi falyattaqillah fi shatr al-akhir. Anyone who has gotten married, he has completed half of his religion. So let him fear Allah in the other half by being married. If he is not married, he's half of a human being. He still has to fulfill the other half where he marries his wife. Antum libasun lahunna wa hunna libasun lakum. You men are a clothing for those women, an apparel for those women. And those women are a clothing for you. Everything that your clothes do for you, your wife does for you. Everything that her clothes do for her, you do for her. Your clothes, they warm you up. Your clothes, they beautify you. Your clothes, they hide your aura. That's what you do for your wife, and that's what your wife does for you. For the people who are married. For the people who are not married, they don't have that metaphor working at all. So Al-Islam came and it freed people from the shackle of being single. A man is single. He has to do so many things. He has to do so many things. He has to work. He has to go to school. And at the same time, he has to clean his house. He has to cook and so forth and so on. Not that that's the only thing that the woman can do, but traditionally speaking, That's what she's going to be doing. So if she's taking care of the house and she's a Rabbatul Manzil, she's in charge of the house, she effectively has freed that husband to go out to hunt for their sustenance and their rizq that Allah Ta'ala has provided for them. It is a freedom. And the person has the freedom to choose who he wants to choose. The Prophet, he says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tunkihul mar'atu li arba'. The woman is chosen and married for 4 reasons. There are 4 reasons why a man will marry and can marry a woman. Li maliha, li jamaliha, li hasabiha, wa li diniha, fadfir bidat ad-din tarabat yadak. A woman is married because of her money. A woman can be married because of her wealth. A woman can marry because of her lineage. A woman can be married because of her beauty. Her wealth, her lineage, her beauty, and because of her deen. Marry the one with the deen and you'll be successful. So that shows that the man has a choice. He has the freedom. Marry a woman who is beautiful. Marry a woman who Allah is blessed with money, wealth. Marry a woman that Allah Azza wa Jalla has given her a good nasab. This person, she's from, for an example, from Quraysh. She's from a noble stock. She's from a group, a family of scholars. She was kin to this great scholar or to these groups of people. So the person wants to marry into that stock. Freedom of choice. He can choose any of those. And as everyone should know, the principle in Islam is An-nisa'u shaqa'iqur rijal. That hadith. An-nisa'u shaqa'iqur rijal. It means women are the twins to men. Everything that is applicable to men, it is applicable to the women. Unless there's a sarif or a dalil that comes to show there's a distinction. So if men can marry for those 4 things, for wealth, for lineage, or for beauty and for the deen, then the woman can also marry a man for those same issues. They can exercise their right of choice. They can choose according to what is pleasing to them, what they want to do. So we have in our religion this clear example. But as we mentioned many times, freedom in Islam, total freedom, is not being able to choose whatever you want to choose, to say whatever you want to say, to eat whatever you want to eat, to wear whatever you want to wear, to think whatever you want to think, to practice whatever you want to practice. This is not hurriya in Islam. True hurriya is for the individual to acknowledge and to accept his ubudiyah of Allah Azza wa Jal. And in the case of marriage, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't allow us to marry any and everyone. We'll explain some of the people who were not allowed to marry after our commercial break, inshallah. So please stay tuned. Welcome back from the commercial break. Concerning the issue of freedom, as we've been mentioning and repeating and reiterating over and over in our talks, freedom in Islam is understood within the prism and the context of having the ubudiyah of Allah Azza wa Jal, being a slave who has servitude to Allah Azza wa Jal. So what he says is what the Muslim loves and what he does. And what he prohibits is what the Muslim has to stay away from. As it relates to the issue of marriage, we've been given a free choice in many aspects of a nikah. Many aspects. But there are some restrictions, many restrictions. And in each and every one of those restrictions, there is a hikmah. There is a reason why this person has been put on the outside of the circle in terms of who you cannot marry. And from them is what Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned in the Quran in Surah An-Nisa. وَلَا تَنْكِحُوا مَا نَكَحَ آبَاؤُكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ إلا ما قد سلف إنه كان فاحشة وساء السبيل. Do not marry those women who your fathers married. Don't marry your stepmothers, the ones who your fathers married. Verily, that was a terrible thing and that was a bad thing. What the people used to do in the times of Jahiliyyah is, if the father married a woman, the son would marry that same woman as well. If the father died or the father got divorced, he would never marry his own mother, not his own mother. It was the wife of his father he would marry. So Allah Ta'ala, by revealing this ayat, he made it impermissible for them to do that. He said, إِلَّا مَا قَدْ سَلِفْ. But before this ayat was revealed, there were some people who were in this relationship. At the moment that the ayat was revealed, the person was married to his father's ex-wife. And the ayat came down. It didn't force him to divorce the lady. He could stay with the lady. He could stay with the lady. But after this ayat was revealed, it was impermissible for the son to marry the father's wife, his stepmother. Then Allah Ta'ala mentions some other ayahs in Surah An-Nisa that mention the other women that we can't marry, or some of the other women that we can't marry. Haram for you to marry. You cannot marry your mothers. You cannot marry your sisters. You cannot marry your daughters. You can't marry your paternal auntie. You can't marry your paternal aunt. You can't marry the lady who is your mother from suckling. You drank milk from her 5 times or more. She's your mother. You can't marry your sister from suckling. The lady, if you sucked from her and you drank from her milk, she gave you suckling. She had a daughter. That's your sister from the halib, from the milk. You also can't marry your raba'ib. Your raba'ib. Allati fi hujurikum min nisaikum allati dakhaltum bihinna. You can't marry your stepdaughters who are living with you in your home. So a man is married to a lady and his wife was married before. She has a daughter. Not his daughter, another daughter. That's the rabiba, his stepdaughter. He cannot marry his stepdaughter unless he never consummated with her mother. If he didn't consummate with her mother, and he divorced her before consummating, or she died before consummating the marriage, if that happened and he never had a relationship with the mother, then it's permissible for him to marry his rabiba. But if he had relationships with the mother, then the rabiba is haram until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Can't marry that girl. And then Allah Ta'ala mentioned in the ayah, and you can't marry the hala'il of your sons. The hala'il are the women, the wives of your sons, whether your son had relationships with her or not. Once he agreed to marry her, khalas, you can never marry her. So you can't marry the son's wife, no matter what. You can't marry. And then Allah will mention, and you can't marry a lady along with her auntie, or marry a woman with her sister. When tajma'u bayna ukhtayn, you can't marry 2 sisters at the same time. You can't marry. So that's who the Quran in Surah An-Nisa mentioned who cannot be married. Can't marry those individuals. And then Allah mentioned another person. He mentioned وَالْمُحْسَنَاتُ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ إِلَّا مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانَكُمْ كِتَابُ اللَّهِ. And you can't marry the women who are already married. There's a woman, she's married to another man. She's already married. She's mutazawwij. You can't go and you can't marry her until she gets a talaq, she does an iddah, and then you can marry her. But if she's already married, obviously you can't marry that woman. And then Allah mentioned at the end of all of those ayat, at the end of all of them, وَأُحِلَّ لَكُمْ مَا وَرَاءَ ذَلِكُمْ. But it is permissible for you to marry anyone else. Anyone else. But that ayat that you can marry anyone else, it is amma, is general. And then there are some ahadith that come and they are khasa, and they have to be, this ayat has to be understood with those. Because there are other people who you can't marry. Other people. In the authentic sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah told us that we cannot marry a woman, your wife, and her auntie, maternal or paternal. You can't marry those two people. And that goes to show the importance of the sunnah. That if you only took the Quran, you would marry those, you won't marry those women, but you will marry your auntie, your wife's auntie, and it's impermissible based upon the sunnah. There's another group or another person who can't be married in the Quran. It's in Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah Ta'ala mentioned, وَلَا تَنْكِهُ الْمُشْرِكِينَ وَلَا تَنْكِهُ الْمُشْرِكَاتِ حَتَّى يُؤْمِنَّ وَلَا أَمَةٌ مُؤْمِنَةٌ خَيْرٌ مِنْ مُشْرِكَةٍ وَلَوْ أَعْجَبَتْكُمْ وَلَا تُنْكِحُ الْمُشْرِكِينَ حَتَّى يُؤْمِنُوا وَلَا عَبْدٌ مُؤْمِنٌ خَيْرٌ مِنْ مُشْرِكٍ وَلَوْ أَعْجَبَكُمْ أُولَئِكَ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى النَّارِ أولئك يدعون إلى النار والله يدعو إلى الجنة ومغفرة بإذنه. Don't marry the polytheist women, the mushrikat. You can't marry the mushrik women. Sikh, Hindu, agnostic, don't marry the mushrik women. Even if that mushrik woman is pleasing you, the mushrikat, she's pleasing, don't marry that lady. Allah said, a woman who is a slave, mushrik, a mu'mina, who's an amma. She's a believer, but she's a slave. She's better than the mushrik woman. She's better than the woman who's a mushrika. And don't marry your daughters to the mushrikeen. Don't marry your daughters to the mushrikeen. They may please you because they have money, they have a good job. Allah Azza wa Jalla said that the believing slave is better than the mushrik slave, is better than the mushrik man, although the mushrik man may please you. The slave is better than that. Why can we not marry them? The reason is mentioned in the ayah. Because they call and they invite you to the hellfire. And Allah Azza wa Jalla invites you to forgiveness. And He invites you to the Jannah. So this goes to show that there are some other people who can't be married as well, other than what was mentioned in those other ayat. And then this is also some exceptions that are made, because we know that the Ahlul Kitab, they have shirk with them. The Christians and the Jews, they have shirk with them. But it's permissible for the Muslim man to marry the lady who is from Ahlul Kitab, the lady from Ahlul Kitab, if he were to give her the dowry. إِذَا آتَيْتُمُهُنَّ أُجُورُهُنَّ. You have to give them the dowry and you can marry them. So the point here is, the religion of Al-Islam allowed a man to make all of these decisions. It gave him the freedom to make all of these choices. And when he makes these choices and these decisions, he makes them based upon what he perceives as being beneficial to him and as being in his best interests. But at the same time, there are those individuals that Al-Islam says, hey, your freedom stops here. Now you have the freedom to obey Allah Azza wa Jal in regards to this issue and that issue amongst those who have been prohibited for you to marry are these people who have been mentioned, and you can't have any problem with that. You can't have any problem with that. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, his daughter Fatima was the wife of his cousin Ali. And one of the non-Muslims of Quraysh, Abu Lahab, Abu Jahl's daughter, they were going to marry her to Ali. And the Prophet said, I don't make haram what Allah made halal. This marriage, if Ali wants to marry her, he can marry her. I don't make halal, I don't make haram what Allah made halal. But the daughter of Rasulullah is not going to be married to a man who's also married to the daughter of the enemy of Allah. Simultaneously, he's going to be responsible for Fatima and be responsible for the daughter of Abu Jahl. The Nabi said this is not going to happen. So if Ali ibn Abi Talib, if he wants to divorce Fatima, if he wants to marry her, then let him divorce my daughter Fatima. But the point here is that the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did not make marriage haram. He said, I'm not doing this because it's not permissible for Ali to have multiple wives. I'm doing this because the reason that I'm doing this is if my daughter Fatima is married to this lady, my daughter is going to hear what bothers her. That's why in one of the narrations, the Nabi said, what bothers her bothers me. What bothers her bothers me. Anything that hits her and makes her uncomfortable, then it also hits me and it makes me uncomfortable. And taking care of his responsibility as her wali, as the one who protects her, as the one who's safeguarding her rights, he said this thing is not going to happen because it's going to be a trial. It's going to be a fitna for my daughter. And he didn't let it happen. Sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. So in our religion, alhamdulillah, as I mentioned, we have that freedom. But like all else, there are boundaries. May Allah Azza wa Jalla accept it from us and accept it from you and protect our wives and your wives, our children, our parents and your parents. We like to see you at the next episode. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.